The water still holds movement, but nothing large remains to shape it. The absence is not empty. It has boundaries shaped by what used to move through it. The structure remains even when the organism does not. Growth did not scale evenly. It changed the physics of interaction. At this scale, movement alters the medium before contact is ever made. Survival becomes a shared reaction to something approaching from beyond perception. The signal of approach arrives before the predator itself. Every movement leaves a measurable trace in the ocean. Even the smallest motion carries information through the water. In layered water, sound does not travel straight. It curves through temperature and density. Stillness becomes a sensing mechanism when pressure can be read at distance. The signal is weak, but enough to shift behavior before danger is seen. Pressure reshapes space, reducing available directions long before pursuit begins. Acceleration does not cut through water, it pushes it into a moving barrier. Movement persists even after the body has passed. The geometry of the jaw determines the method of attack. Positioning below removes visibility while maintaining sensory access. Beyond a narrow band, sight becomes unreliable. Larger bodies carry concentrated energy, but also generate detectable movement. The hunt becomes an interaction between two moving pressure systems. Certain positions amplify detection, while others create temporary blind zones. The environment reacts before direct interaction occurs. Speed is not constant. It is applied in short, decisive bursts. Collective movement fails when pressure exceeds coordination. The imbalance is not speed, but efficiency. The attack is calculated before it is executed. The moment of contact is brief, but transforms the surrounding water instantly. Cutting surfaces evolved to maximize damage in minimal time. The result lingers longer than the event itself. Even passive drift becomes information in a medium that carries everything. Natural movement can extend the reach of a predator beyond its physical body. The hunt can begin without movement when the ocean itself carries the signal. The response reveals the direction of pressure, even when the source remains hidden. Movement aligns, it becomes easier to anticipate. Small changes in angle reshape how force moves through water. Escape into depth requires energy that cannot always be sustained. The deeper the water, the greater the cost of movement. Dominance comes from occupying the layer where movement is easiest. Energy loss appears before physical contact. Energy is released in precise intervals, not continuously. Efficiency determines outcome more than speed. Larger prey attempts to disrupt the approach by changing orientation. The hunt adapts to movement through pressure, not sight. The system clears space before the final interaction. Presence alone removes surrounding life from the immediate area. At close range, the field narrows into a single path. Greater effort produces clearer signals. Movement itself becomes a guide for interception. The trajectory was determined long before the moment occurred. The water itself becomes opaque during peak interaction. Size persists even when visibility does not. The highest forces exist for only moments. After the event, the water continues to move in memory of what occurred. The predator expends less than the system it disrupts. Small inputs can produce large systemic responses. The result is measured in absence rather than presence. After the event, the system resets, but the pattern remains. These events are not isolated, they form a repeating structure. The largest hunters did not chase prey, they turned the ocean itself into a system where survival became impossible. Every depth carries its own risk, and none remain untouched. The system extends beyond individuals into a continuous field. Dominance emerges when multiple bodies operate as one system. The deeper regions demand energy that cannot be sustained for long. Escape requires more than most organisms can afford. Control comes from occupying the most efficient zone. Speed increases exposure when space offers no cover. Multiple fields eliminate escape routes before pursuit begins. Coordination emerges without communication through shared environmental feedback. Exposure replaces confinement as the primary threat. The system narrows from every direction simultaneously. There is no position left where the signal weakens. Moving toward light removes concealment. Position determines visibility more than distance. Light reveals movement, but only for those within it. Fatigue reduces the ability to respond collectively. Multiple inputs combine into a single overwhelming force. Movement becomes physically constrained. Before capture, scale increases the reach of each event. The system favors those who disturb it least relative to their size. The pattern expands until it defines the environment itself. The result of dominance is not presence, but removal. Separation does not reduce influence when fields overlap. Repetition transforms events into systemic change. Survival shifts toward minimal exposure rather than active escape. Even reduced zones of safety become occupied. Every viable space becomes part of the system. The system resets through absence. Dominance does not require constant action. The imbalance persists even when activity decreases. Entire regions become temporarily devoid of life. At the highest level, even dominance becomes solitary. Few individuals can define an entire system. Absence invites gradual return. The system does not fully disappear even when unseen. Recovery becomes temporary under repeated disturbance. Balance does not return immediately. Presence alone maintains dominance. The system stabilizes around imbalance rather than equilibrium. The ocean continues unchanged, even as the system within it shifts. Dominance begins to remove the very resource it depends on. The system begins to thin from within. Movement continues, even when interaction does not. Survival collapses into smaller zones. The space where life can exist becomes increasingly limited. Concentration removes the possibility of avoidance. Separation becomes more common than grouping. Group survival mechanisms depend on density that no longer exists. The cost of movement no longer matches the value of the target. Entire sections of ocean carry no immediate life. The system stretches outward in search of diminishing returns. Coverage increases while reward decreases. Predictability disappears from the system. Searching beyond optimal layers reduces efficiency. The system begins to lose its advantage. The scale of events diminishes with available targets. Movement becomes selective rather than continuous. The system adapts by limiting its own motion. Encounters become less frequent. The system begins to lose its intensity. A limit is reached where recovery cannot match removal. The environment begins to reflect the imbalance. The system loses its interconnected structure. Coordination disappears when distance increases. Recovery begins in fragments. Signals weaken below detectable thresholds. The system depends on detectable movement. Absence creates temporary safe zones. Scale becomes a disadvantage when resources decline. The system can no longer sustain its largest components. Balance does not return evenly. Dominance fades as energy becomes limited. The system begins to correct itself. Smaller life returns first. At the end, even the largest becomes scarce. The system moves toward a new equilibrium. Life spreads again across across available space. The largest hunters no longer define the system. Stability returns when imbalance disappears. The system remains, but its rulers have changed. The system no longer concentrates power into a single form. Survival spreads across many instead of concentrating into few. Size alone no longer defines success. The ocean returns to a state where movement no longer reshapes the whole. The system favors what can exist without altering everything around it. In the end, survival belongs to what the system can support, not what it once allowed. Subscribe for crazy facts about the world.